Hey guys, it's Carrie from Lovely Etc. and today I'm going to show you how to reupholster dining room chairs. This is the easiest upholstery project that you'll ever do, so even if you're a complete beginner, you can definitely handle this. I'm going to share step by step how to do it, give you some tips for saving money on materials, and also share how to get really smooth corners, which is honestly the only part that's even the slightest bit tricky. And I'll have a complete materials list and printable instructions over at my website, Lovely Etc., so I will link that as well. So the first step is removing the seats from your chairs and then taking off this old fabric. Removing the old fabric is really easy. Just flip your chair seats over and pull out all the old staples. You can use a flathead screwdriver and needle nose pliers, or you can use an upholstery staple remover. If you're going to be doing more than one reupholstery project, I highly recommend getting the staple remover to make things much faster. Once you get your fabric off your chairs, you can check out the wood and the foam that's already there and see if it's in good enough condition to reuse or not. Clearly, some of my wood is not in great condition. So I am going to cut some new seats for my chairs from 1/2-inch plywood, just using this wood as a pattern and cutting it out with a jigsaw. As far as the foam, if it still has good bounce and it's comfortable and it doesn't look stained or gross, you can definitely reuse it. Then on top of the foam, there'll probably be some sort of a batting. Again, if it's clean, you can reuse it. If you want to recover it, batting's pretty inexpensive. I do have a couple of tips for potentially saving some money on your upholstery foam because it's surprisingly expensive. One, if you are going to buy it somewhere at a fabric store like Joann's, definitely use a coupon. It's going to be worth it. And if that's still out of your budget, I have gotten inexpensive foam mattress toppers before and cut them to the shape I needed. It's a little bit thinner sometimes than upholstery foam, but you can double up the layer and it actually works really well and is really comfortable. As far as your fabric, you want to use something that's an upholstery weight or a home decor fabric weight. It's just a little bit thicker than other fabrics, and so it can hold up better to people getting up and down and rubbing against it and sitting on it all the time. I'm using this fabric that I picked up at Joann's. I have in the past used shower curtains as upholstery. It works really well because it holds up to moisture, it's heavy duty, it's made to be used, and usually there's enough fabric in one shower curtain to do 4 or 5 chairs, maybe 6. I've also used outdoor tablecloths, and for both of those things I really like to look at places like Marshall's and Home Goods and TJ Maxx because they usually have a good selection of really interesting fabrics for a really cheap price. Clearly I'm a big fan of reusing things for something they may not have been intended for, but as long as it works well and it can save me some money, I'm all about it. The foam on my chairs was getting pretty worn out, so I am replacing it with some scraps of foam that I have left over from a previous project where I turned an upholstered bench into a wooden bench for my porch, so I took off all the upholstery. And I'm a huge fan of reusing what you got, so I'm going to cut these scraps of foam down to the correct size for my chairs. One of the best tools to use to cut foam is actually an electric carving knife. It cuts really nicely and quickly, but I don't have one, so I'm just using some nice sharp scissors. All right, now we're ready to put it together. So you're going to start with your fabric, lay it face down on your surface, and if you have a pattern like my fabric, I'm going to try to line up the center of my fabric with the center of my chair, and I'm also going to make sure to keep everything nice and straight. After your fabric comes batting, then your foam, and then finally your wooden seat. Now I'm gonna take a minute and just make sure everything is straight the way I want it. All right, now we're ready to staple everything together. I am using this old staple gun. If you have a pneumatic staple gun, awesome, but you really don't need one for a project like this. Any staple gun will work. You're gonna start with one staple in the center of each side, and you want to really pull your fabric pretty tight. That's the key to making any upholstery job look nice. Once you've done that, you can turn it over, make sure it's looking okay, make sure if you're trying to keep a pattern straight that it's still straight. Then you're just going to flip it back over and continue stapling along each side, leaving the corners undone for now. Keep pulling the fabric tight as you go. Okay, I have stapled along all 4 sides, and now the only thing left is the corners. So first, I am upholstering these back corners, and these are a little different in my chair because they have these insets that go around the back of the chair. So this is all in the end going to be covered by the sides of the chair, so I don't need to be quite as precious about how I am attaching this. Okay, so my seats are almost finished being upholstered. The only thing left is these front corners, and this is the only part that actually can get a little bit tricky. There are lots of different ways to get smooth corners when you're upholstering seats like this, and I've tried many of them, and I'm going to show you the way that I think is the easiest. So the reason that these corners can get really tricky is because there's all this excess fabric, and if you just start stapling it on, it's going to be a wrinkly mess, which is what we do not want. So first I'm going to staple these sides a little closer to the corner, and you can just imagine a straight line going right through the corner. When you're stapling, don't cross that line. So you want to keep this fabric on this side of the line and this fabric on that side. So now I have this nice fold of fabric that needs to be dealt with. I am going to be folding my corners this way. This is the front of my chair, this is the side, so I've decided to fold it towards the side. And the goal is to end up with one very nice fold of fabric. So the first thing that I'm going to do is cut away some of this excess fabric just from this inside bit. So I'm just going to cut down, not quite at this fold, but a little bit inset, and then cut over from the side. You don't want to cut too close to the wood, and you want to make sure you're not cutting this part of the fabric, because then that's going to cause a whole mess. So be careful, and remember, you can always cut more, but you can't come back and put it back on. Once I have that cut, I'm going to start tucking this fabric in to try to make this one nice fold. And as I'm doing that, it looks like I may need to cut a little more fabric, but we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and staple this a bit closer to keep it out of my way, and then the rest I'm just tucking in to make one fold. So I'm just tucking this in, and you can use a flathead screwdriver to help if you need a little help getting it nice and tucked. And once you have it in place, just staple it. You want to make sure that this fabric cuts in a little bit and isn't flapping out over the edge of your chair, so if you need to, you can fold it under again to get it over where you need it to be. And it makes a pretty neat corner with just a little fold. Then you can reattach the newly covered seats to your chairs, and it's almost like you have brand new chairs. And now I'm going to go Scotch guard my new seats before my kids start sitting on them. If you think you may be ready to tackle some more advanced reupholstery projects, I have another video all about how to reupholster an armchair, and I also have lots of information about upholstery on my website. If you haven't, I'd love for you to subscribe to my channel, Lovely Etc., where I share lots of inexpensive DIY ideas for creating a home that you love on a budget.